Hey guys, welcome to Cultivating Success. I'm super excited tonight. We've got Dr. Colby Wilson. Very exciting and sad because I'm sad that she is leaving. Some of you probably already know this. In fact, actually, our last podcast, we already knew she was leaving. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, how you need to be prepared for your next step. So welcome back, Colby.
Thank you. Feels good to be back in my own office.
Yes, we're doing it in Colby's office. We do everything in Colby's office. We eat lunch in here. We have meetings in here because I don't like the cold and it's the warmest office.
Yeah. And I am too hot, so I'm chronically hot in here. Just makes sense.
Yeah, pretty much. If you hear some crinkling, also, if you don't know, Colby has a really bad sweet tooth, and she has an array of candies that we are eating during this podcast, so that's what you hear.
It's just a really bad tooth. Just likes eating.
That's true. You do like eating. Anything, yes. I was surprised because we went to dinner before this podcast, and I ate more than her. I don't think that's ever happened. So today we're not going to be doing this super rigid podcast. We're kind of just talking about what it was like for her the last 2.5 years, advice that she has to students. And what I'm hoping that you guys see is that you should have a good relationship with the doc you're working for, and they should be excited for your next step. So we're going to talk about that first. Tell us where you're going. What's happening?
So I'm moving back to my home state of Maine to most likely purchase an office where my negotiations are underway with that. So most likely doing that, there is always the chance that it won't work out. So I would then be starting my own practice. Either way, I'm going to be taking this office that I purchased and completely rebranding it and pretty much making it my own. So I'm just saying I'm moving back to Maine to start my own practice. It'll be Southern Maine, so it's not really where I'm from. But yeah, it'll be where I'm kind of setting up my home base for the first time in like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, what I think is super important is communication. So this was always the plan. I know some people feel like it's sudden or like, oh my God, I can't believe she's leaving. But like this was always the plan. I knew Colby was going to leave in 2 years. She stayed 2.5 just because the timing worked out a little bit better for her to leave in April. But that was the thing. So we had time to get ready for it. We have a new doc who's taking over her practice and her patients, and we're making it as smooth as possible. There's going to, people are upset, of course, because they get really attached to.
They're not mad.
They're not mad, no.
But they're like, they're feeling ways.
They have feelings. And sometimes Colby and I don't know how to express feelings. Like one time we almost hugged, but then we didn't. Remember, we were kind of close and we're like, oh, are we supposed to hug right now?
I don't remember that.
And then I just left the room.
Oh, that one. You thought I was reaching out to hug you, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then you stuttered. And then I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And then I had to leave the room.
Yeah. You said, I thought you were going to hug me. And I said, no. Yeah. I'm not a big hugger, which chiropractic school made me a better hugger. And being in Texas, but then I left Texas and it was like, no more hugs, really.
Same. When I was in school at Life West in California, they would do these hugs where they would breathe in and breathe out.
Yeah.
Like they're still hugging and breathing together. I almost left first day.
Yeah. For like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Kids in my school do that. Also, all the power to you. That probably takes a lot of emotional capacity that I don't have. But yeah, made me super uncomfortable. But anyways,
well, let's start off with a couple things that you learned being here. And I mean here, but just in practice, your first couple years. What did you think was easier than you thought it was going to be? And what did you think was harder than you thought it was going to be?
Okay. Probably what was easier than I thought was getting people better. And I think I said this in the first episode we did together too, that I was really nervous and super attached to my patient outcomes. Like I had literally been here for 2 weeks or something. And I was like, I have this low back pain patient and they're not getting better or whatever. And Allison was like, don't worry about that. Chiropractic just works. So it's going to be fine and it's going to work out and they're going to feel good. And obviously they did. And that was like, obviously I saw it in clinic a little bit, but not so much because I didn't really see that many people. And the people weren't super messed up that were really coming in. So being here and seeing pretty messed up people that were in pain to touch and watch them get better within one session was really crazy and definitely not really, well, it made me more confident, but it also made me just realize that what I'm doing is for the most part, foolproof. If you are passionate about it and intentful with it, it's not rocket science to get people better if you have the intention. So that was surprising because I just thought it was going to be going home and doing research and being like, this person must have this, and like, how do I treat a spondylosis, which obviously there's some different things you can do, but and it's not really like that at all, which is cool. It's easier than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just better. I don't know.
No, I think that the thing is, and we talked about this at dinner, is that when you're in school, you're either adjusting each other, you're getting over adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not like seeing these miraculous things because you're getting adjusted all the time. But majority of people have never been to a chiropractor, or they haven't been adjusted in a long time. So the impact is so much greater for them. And yeah, when someone doesn't get better now, it's like, whoa, what's happening here?
Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing when you go home? Then I'll start asking other questions. So I'm like, something is not adding up here. Like, are they going home and joining Fight Club? Like, why is their low back pain not getting better?
Yeah. Well, what did you think was harder?
Honestly, not that it was hard in this office when I first got here, because it was pretty well set up for an associate. Like, I started getting new patients immediately. But getting new patients, like, there were times in the office where we're just like doing so much work to get new patients, like asking you for reviews, writing blog posts, posting on Google My Business. Like, I had no idea that much went into an office. I kind of just, I don't know what I thought. I just thought that, you were good. People came to you, they liked your website, they saw it. But when you're up against 100 other chiropractors in 2 square miles, it's like, you gotta know your stuff, and you gotta have really good websites and good systems answering the phones, and just like being able to convert people. So I was definitely surprised how much it took to get a bunch of people through the door. It wasn't hard because it was set up for me, but I didn't know how much had to go into it.
Yeah. And I mean, that is the number one thing when if you are opening your own practice or you're being an associate, even if you have systems in place where patients are coming in, you have to nurture those patients and duplicate those patients. So I think what you did really, really well here is that, like, you took every time you got a new patient, you would multiply that new patient. Yeah. So either you would get a referral from them, or you would make them do a review, or you would, make sure that they came in consistently and you would convert them. And so every opportunity that was given to you, I think that's why you were so successful so quickly. And I think that that's also something that you have to think about, is understanding that every single new patient is like very precious, and you like have to take care of it. And it's all about how you communicate with that new person, because they're coming in here and a lot of times they've had either a bad experience with the chiropractor, they think it's really weird, or someone definitely has told them to not come in.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that they feel super comfortable.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. And also, once people trust you, then it was like, they would open up about things, get them on acupuncture if like they needed some more emotional support. If they start saying, their inflammation's super high, get them on nutrition. So I had a lot of things that I could always direct them towards too, not to be salesy, but to literally help them get better in their care. And then that also brought me more people, because they would be like, oh my God, my brother needs to do this acupuncture thing, bring him in. So like having some avenues was very useful for me in the beginning too. And also I was like so excited about doing all those things. So I was just like telling people about them. And then I kind of forgot to tell people all the things that I did, until one day one of my patients was like, what is all this stuff over here? And I was like, oh, that's for my nutrition patients and like some acupuncture stuff. And she was like, why would you not tell me you did any of that? Like, I want to do that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm actually really bad at telling people all the stuff that they can have here. So, but also to the new patient part, when I first got here, I had a lot of new patients. Like, I did not want for anything, because I was getting used to like building the practice. And if it grew too fast, it would have been overwhelming. It grew at a really good pace. But then this last summer, summers are like kind of slow here in Colorado because people are obsessed with doing things outside and traveling. So sometimes it dies down a little bit. And we kind of had a little slump, and we were like, oh my God, a little slump. And then it was like, wow, I kind of thought I was not necessarily like appreciating those new patients as much as I should have been, because they were just calling all the time, walking in through the door. So definitely appreciating the new patients was a good lesson from the last year.
Yeah, because things go up and they go down, and we just had I think that we slacked off a lot.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of, in October, I think is when we sort of picked it up again, had to put some more work in it, and I would say the last 2 months has been great.
Yeah.
But like we had a little slump, and that's what happens is you get complacent. You don't think about it. And
we were going on vacations too. So like that didn't help. And yeah.
And that's the hardest thing about being in practice is the emotional ups and downs. So a lot of times you have a killer month, and then you all of a sudden have like a horrible month, and then you have like an okay month. And so, I mean, really that most people are not self-employed because they can't handle that. They can't handle the emotional ups and downs.
It is tough. Like my first year here, my like 4th month, I think I got 3 or 4 prepays. So I made double of what I had made the other months. Like I think on maybe it was like my 6th month, I think I made over $12,500.
I think it was your 4th month, but yeah, it was an early month, and
I was like, oh my God! I called my mom. I was like, I just got a $5,000 check, and I'm like, I'm rich. And then you're like, okay, well, like make sure you're not, getting freaked out next month because it's going to be lower because you're going to be seeing those people and they're not going to be paying. And I was like, yeah, no, I won't be. But then the next month it was like, I don't know, 6 or 8 or something, and I was like, damn it, that is rough. That feels rough, but it obviously balanced out to 2 just really solid months. So
yeah, and I think that you have to just like, you want to get excited about your wins, but you can't get too upset about when it's just, it always works out really. It's just that it's not what you thought. Mm-hmm. You're expecting one thing and something else.
Yeah, but it's all good.
Yeah. So, it's interesting, like having you here, and it seems like it's gone really fast, but also seems like you've been here for a really long time.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
So how has it been for you leaving? Because I think that like, this is kind of a unique thing. Most people don't go through that very often. You're kind of one place for a while.
Yeah. I think because I always knew I was going to leave, it's probably a little easier. I remember my aunt, she's a chiropractor in Texas, and she was like, you're not going to want to leave if you take this job. Because I had asked her a lot about like what I should do. And she was like, just so you know, if you build a practice like you're going to be building there, you're going to have a really hard time leaving, and you're not going to. She was like, I still live in Texas, and I meant to leave like 40 years ago. And not 40, sorry, Aunt Kelly. 20.
She's 130.
Yeah, 20 years ago. But yeah, I still got super attached to people, but it was also like I made sure not to get too attached to anybody. Like I definitely have my favorites, but just knowing that I was leaving, I think made it a little easier. And then also like I told a lot of my favorite patients off the bat because they'd be like, are you going to buy a house or whatever? And I was like, honest, like I'm actually probably not going to be here forever. Like, and so they kind of knew too, which also made it easier. But right now it's a really weird experience because I'm leaving Colorado, but I'm not going back to Maine yet. I'm doing like a 3-month road trip, which is good because it allows me some time to like come to terms with everything a little bit. But leaving here right now, it's super sad leaving my patients. I'm scheduling them for their last appointments currently. And like a lot of people are like, I'll see you every week until you go. So I'm putting them on the schedule. And then I've already said goodbye to like 3 or 4 of them. And it's super weird. I definitely have not accepted it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that you just, you did really well here. You just fit right in. So yeah. I think that, I'm sad to see you leave. I know I'm not a very emotional person, but it's been really, really nice having you here. And I said this once to you, and I'll say it publicly, is that you exceeded my expectations. And I've said that so few times in my life. Mm-hmm. So I'm very, very happy for your next endeavor, and hopefully that practice will work out because I did buy a practice. Mm-hmm. And I've given Colby some advice on buying a practice. She also has chiropractors in her family so that mm-hmm. she can get help with that. But that's the thing, guys, it's like you need somebody that has gone through whatever it is that you decide you want to do. So I'm sure you've asked your aunt and uncle a lot of questions.
I have, and the interesting thing is you bought a practice and they started one right out of school. Or you associated and then you bought a practice. So you took a more similar route to me and they bought one. So when I initially brought it up to them, they were like, we could really see you doing fine just starting your own, and you wouldn't have to deal with the banks and like all this stuff. So I'm like, yeah, that's really enticing. But then on the other end, you were like, you're going to be so set up financially to make more money right off the bat and not have as much struggle and like trying to bring people in and stress. So I got to hear the 2 different perspectives, and ultimately, I think buying the practice is the smarter option because it's a well-established one. So it is good. Like if I didn't have my mentors in place, I would be floundering, like for sure. If I worked for a doctor that I didn't have a good relationship with, and then I was leaving to start my own practice and I didn't feel like I would be able to call them or like ask their advice, that would be super stressful. So having good mentors was definitely like through school, I wasn't close with any of my teachers. Like I got along with them, but I didn't have any mentors. And now I feel like I obviously have my aunt and uncle, and then I have Allison, and I feel like I'm more well set up to do this now than I would have ever been.
Yeah, I think a big misconception is that, you know, like, oh, you can't make money unless you own your own practice. Well, that's not true for like 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
Colby made great money for how little she works here.
I know.
So, you know, Colby really worked 3 days a week. I mean, she really worked like 2 full days and 2 half days, but a total of 3. And, you know, she was able to do everything she wanted to and put some money away. And, you know, it was a win-win situation. You know, she brought the office money and she was able to keep a percentage, because that's how I pay my associates. I think that's the most fair way, because then she doesn't have a ceiling. You know, she wants to make some more money. Sometimes she would work more. She would work some Saturdays if she had like a trip coming up, to make some more money. And I think that like, that's also like, I wanted someone motivated like that. I want associates that are like, oh, the more I work, more I put into this, the more I get out of it. That's my advice. I mean, there's a million ways that you can run a paycheck, but I think that you got to be really careful with complex, weird, I'll pay you this base salary and then this percentage on each visit it's like weird Chiro math, as I like to call it.
Yeah, no, I just talked to a student today actually, because they wanted some advice on schools and my experience as a chiropractor. And they were asking me like a lot of really forward thinking questions that I never thought of going to school. Like, what should I look for in associateship? Like, they haven't even applied to a school yet. And I'm like, that is great. So I obviously gave them the podcast. I was like, listen to this podcast. If you're already thinking about this stuff, this is going to have you set up by the time you leave. But she was like, well, what did you do? Do you have your own practice or whatever? And I was like, no. I explained the situation. And I was like, and that's like totally what I would recommend, because even though I definitely could have opened up and I was competent enough and, you know, had the skills and probably had the resources if I had gone right back to Maine, like I would guess that I'd probably be at the same exact spot I'm going to be at. You know what I mean? Like I skipped a bunch of years of struggle and not saving any money to just go home and buy a practice and feel like a very competent doctor 2 years out.
Yeah, let me be clear. Colby could absolutely have started her practice out of school, but she still shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference is like, when I go to talk to students, they're like, oh, you're saying that like you can't start a practice. And I'm like, well, you can, if you want to. But even those that could, like Johnny Reuter was on my podcast. He has Legendary Chiropractor. And he has done some amazing things in his first couple of years of practice, as far as like, he's got a startup chiropractic school, he's got his own podcast, but he's an associate. So it allowed him to have that extra time to be able to do those other entrepreneurial things that there's no way he would have been able to do if he was running his own practice. So the thing is, like, you could be a person that could start a practice, you still shouldn't.
Yeah. I would say there are very few. I think that if you were a business person, or like, honestly, if you had run similar, like a clinic or a massage therapist place, and you are really feeling like you can do it, then yeah, you might not want to, or you might not be happiest doing that. Like maybe you like the whole business end. Maybe there are some instances where it's better, but I would say you could still always learn something from somebody who's been doing the exact same thing you want to do longer. Yeah,
I just really hope that if you are listening to this podcast, that you understand that like you don't have to, or like that there are positions available for you. Because the thing is, like, what chiropractors are really bad at is like advertising good jobs. I know a lot of docs are looking for an associate, and they would be good positions, but they just sort of like, they're so busy. So like, it is on you as a student to reach out to docs, try to go shadow when you're early in school. You know, if you're at least halfway through, you should be shadowing offices all the time.
For sure. Which I, in my last year, had a different job lined up already in Australia. I might have talked about this on the last one too. Maybe not. And then that fell through because of the whole situation a few years ago. And which we still will not name. Then I was looking, I said this on the last one for sure. I was looking for jobs and I was like, God, these job listings suck. Like, it's all doctors that are like, I am getting ready to leave. I want you to either buy into and I'll still be part owner, like all these complicated things. And like huge commitments for a lot of them, like this will be your clinic. Essentially, most of them were like that. Like either you're going to be an associate for life or this will be your clinic. And I was like, God, those both are not what I want at all. And I said that the reason that I actually applied to this one is because it said, don't submit a resume. And I was like, literally closed my laptop. I was like, good, I do not want to make a resume right now. And then I called and talked to Allison and I was like, sweet, I'll drive up this weekend. And she's like, don't you live in Texas? And I was like, yeah. I'll drive up this weekend. She's like, okay. And then we met and it was perfect. And yeah, that was like the best thing that could have happened because Australia would have honestly been brutal at that time. So I definitely like did a ton of research. I looked at a bunch of job opportunities and this one for sure spoke to me. As I don't even remember anything else the listing said besides do not send in a resume.
And I had people send a resume and I just literally was like, you are disqualified.
Yeah.
Because you can't listen, like that means that you like cannot take directions. The whole point of that is not because I think resumes are good or bad. It's just that like it's in there to see if you're willing to pick up the phone and talk to me. Because here's the thing, guys. You have been in school for a long time and you know how to pass tests and you know how to fill in some bubbles. You know how to like do an essay. But if your personable skills are not there, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
So that's what's important is to make sure that you have the ability to like be personable because like we said before, the chiropractic part, people just get better.
Yeah. That's not the hard part at all.
Yeah. Well, did you learn anything about yourself as a human being?
Tons. Well, while I was here, it was like a really, I guess, pivotal point in history anyways, with the whole situation. So I learned a lot about that and like my willingness to, stand up for what I thought and our willingness to do the things that we wanted to do and here, regardless of what was going on out there. This is sounding very cryptic, but you guys get it. And I learned that, I don't know, it's been really nice. I guess it's been nice leaving too, because people have been very open and honest in telling me, like, you've made a huge difference in my life or all of these things. And even when I say that now, I'm like, yeah, of course, the adjustment or whatever. But like, it's definitely a confidence booster to be like, I am good at connecting with people. I like connecting with people. I am better at it than I thought I was, and probably than I was, a few years ago. And I like couldn't be happier with the job that I've picked, the profession that I'm in. And I just think that there's like no ceiling with chiropractic because like you said in your talk, like the universal principles are really the same as the chiropractic ones. And there's really like no ceiling to how much you can grow and how much good you can do. Kind of like, that sounds a little cheesy, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, well, like we talked about this a bit at dinner. One thing that you realize is that most people, they don't have a passion for what they do.
Yeah.
They hate their job. Yeah.
And like I said, I've never had a day where I've been like, oh, I don't want to go to work. I've never felt that in 2 years. And usually, like, oh, well, you're still young and like new in your career. No, I get sick of things within like 3 weeks. Like if I have a job, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to that job anymore after 3 weeks. And it's been 2 years and I'm never like, oh, never. So very satisfied with the career that I've chosen.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is like I think the more that you're in this line of work and you see what you have to deal with people, because not only do you have to work on their health, but like you have to deal with like they're unhappy and like their mood is down. So you have to be super charged up yourself. You have to protect your mindset. You have to protect how you feel.
Yeah.
Because most people are not in that same vibration as you. And so you have to be careful to not let them bring you down.
Yeah, for sure. And then you see like how unhappy a lot of people are. And it also makes you grateful for what you get to do every day.
Yeah. And, having Colby here during the situation was great. And the last podcast, did we have our tattoos?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So we got tattoos together, not matching tattoos.
No.
But tattoos that represented freedom and represented that we felt strong and just being truly who we are.
Yeah, like if you didn't listen to that podcast, we got our tattoos in our tattoo artist like basement. It was the first story of his house, so it wasn't really a basement, but because they were gonna impose certain things on us at the studio, and we were like, we cannot do that because we haven't been doing it, and we will not do it getting the tattoos that symbolize freedom, if you know what I mean. So he was like, guys, I totally get it. I'm with you, you know, stand strong for freedom. But like, I can't have you in the studio. My boss is going to get really mad. So he's like, why don't you hang around and we'll go to my house and I'll literally bring the tattoo gun home with me and I'll tattoo you guys like in my house. My wife and kids will stay upstairs. And we did. And it was like, honestly, looking back, a pretty funny first tattoo experience.
Oh yeah, because it was your first tattoo.
My literal first tattoo. That's fun.
Turned out great. And then since then, you have like 4 more tattoos.
I have 1, 2. Yeah, I have 5 now. I have 6.
So, I mean, hopefully you find a position. Maybe you don't have to get tattoos together, but you know,
it's better if you do.
It is that you're having a good time at office. But I think I probably just bother Colby more than at this point help her.
I just 70-30. Bother help.
Yeah, mostly bother. So I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm like working. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll go back to my office.
What are you having for lunch?
Oh my God, guys, I need help. I cannot order lunch because I don't use the DoorDash delivery stuff.
It could not be easier.
No. So Colby says I can text her once a week.
Once a week, and I'll order lunch.
Well, what would you say if you could? We're gonna wrap up a little bit because otherwise we're gonna keep going forever.
Yeah.
But if you could give like a solid advice, 1 or 2 things you would say to a recent grad or new grad or about to be.
Well, I would say do what you're doing when you get out of school because it's best for you, not what your parents think you should do or not what all your friends are doing or not what the coolest kids in the class are doing. That is for real. Like all the kids in my class were like, if you don't open up your own practice, you're not cool.
Oh.
Yeah, those kids were not cool. I hope they're not going to listen to this. You know who you are. You weren't cool. They all opened up their own offices. Some of them have opened up like multiple offices because they just like can't, I don't know. Anyways, whatever you do, make sure it's the right move for you and not like what you think you should do. So if you think, oh man, I really would love like 1 more year of experience under another doctor. All my friends are opening up and I'm going to look like such a little bitch if I don't open up. Like just associate for a year. It's not a big deal. And it's not going to matter at all. Like a ton of my friends that wanted to open up ended up asking me after a year or so, like, damn, how did you find your job? Because that looks like a sweet setup you have. And I'm like, yeah, it was. And it was like the best choice I could have made. So with that being said, if you feel super strongly in your heart and soul to start your own practice, then don't associate because you'll be wasting everyone's time. So yeah, I guess that's is that good?
That was good.
Is that a good surprise?
Yeah, I asked Colby not to tell me because we talked a little bit about what we're going to say.
I honestly came up with that on the fly, so I didn't have anything before. That's what really the best advice, though, I think. Just like, don't listen to anybody else. If you feel like you need more time, if you want some guidance, if you want to continue to learn, associate.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I talk about this a lot. It's you hear something on stage, it sounds cool, right? And then you'll find out, man, there's just a lot of bullshit in chiropractic. Yeah. And the more I do this podcast, the more I'm interviewing people, you know, I'm just like, wow, okay, that's just a bunch of bullshit. So
yeah, like people making up stats, like crazy things, just because like who's gonna keep you accountable for those things? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I do think that like figuring out what you truly want is what's important. So figure that out before you go into a position, so that way you can see if it's even a good fit.
Yeah. And didn't someone say, "Oh, this podcast is only about associating"?
Yes, maybe. Yeah, I've had some people like, "Oh, every time I listen to your podcast, it seems like you just like say associate." I'm like, "Well, yes, that is what I say." Yeah. But at the end of the day,
it's because I've just lived it and we have seen it work. And me going to open up my own office will be like the true test of this little associate incubator thing we just did. See how it works.
Yeah. So, and again, guys, like you can make your own decision and do whatever you want to, but I will say that the business side of it is not as easy as you think it's going to be. but it also doesn't have to be as hard. So you can see it both ways, because with Colby, I think that she found stuff to be challenging, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to like pay my rent.
No, it was never like that.
So, and I think that's where you have to be careful of, like, when you open it in practice and you're trying to like get patients and thinking, oh my God, how can I can't even pay the rent on this office, let alone whatever, all the other things that I need. So it can be challenging to take care of people when you're in that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I never want to be in that position. And now I have a cushy enough savings that I won't be in that position.
All right. Do you have any other words of advice?
No, just thank you for the last 2 years have been, as I've said on here, probably the best I could have hoped for. And I'm super grateful and excited for my next step.
I'm excited for your next step too. Maybe I'll give you a hug after the podcast.
Maybe.
Okay.
No, we'll save that for the going away party.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Wilson, for being on. And thanks, guys, for listening. This is Cultivating Success, and we have a podcast the first and third Monday. We're just talking about what's best for you. See you later.
Bye.